Welcome back to the big broadcast, coast to coast and boulder to boulder. We've got a great guest with us today. I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself. We'll talk a little bit about why she's here. Go ahead and jump in there, my friend. Tell us all about yourself.
Oh, sure. Thank you, James. My name is Tracy Whalen, and I am a researcher and a professional speaker on the topics of careers, employment, technology, and women's leadership, and it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, let's talk about this. Dr. Tracy Willing with us today. She's a thought leader, global speaker, and media contributor, and she's making herself available to us today. Now, Tracy, tell us a little bit on your background.
So my background is I actually live in Palo Alto, which is a Silicon Valley in Northern California. I have been a high technology executive for many years at companies that you might know, like Apple, HP, and Cisco Systems. I've also been a visiting scholar at Stanford University while working, researching the impact of technology on society, work, and careers. And I am an author, and I have 11 books on a number of topics.
Tracy Whalen with us today here on the program. Tell us about your books.
Well, thank you. I'll just tell you about three. I'm sure your listeners can't bear to hear about 11 of them, but the most recent one is called Employed for Life, and that is about the evolution of society and how we're living longer. And as a result of that, we're working longer, maybe for 50 or 60 years, some of us to maybe we're 80. And how do we stay employed for life and really continue our careers for longevity? Women Lead is about women in leadership and how the trends are pointing to that women are today and tomorrow's modern leaders. It's very exciting both on the entrepreneurial side and the corporate side. And then Society 3.0 is really about how technology is changing the world that we live in, and it's impacting so many aspects of our lives, whether it's the home, it's work, it's our careers, it's education. And so I really just look at the different trends and see, what is the future of work and what are the skills that are required in a digital world.
Tracy Whalen with us today here on the program. Tell us about the topic we're going to talk about here.
Well, we were going to talk a little bit about careers today because
yes,
being employed for life seems to be top of mind for so many people. We've moved from this classical world to a technology-based world. We're living longer. And, what is it like today if you are only in one company and you don't know what it's like out there? What if you're not working? What are the challenges that you have today and the opportunities?
Tracy Whalen with us today. Tell us a little bit more about this topic here, my friend. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. So, in Employed for Life, what I do is I actually interviewed and studied a number of people. One is HR executives who were looking at work and what it's like to have three generations, in the workforce, many of them having different backgrounds, different technology interests, and different expectations. And so how does the workforce prepare for this new kind of employee and a blended employee from multiple generations? I also talked to recruiters, people who are actually actively looking for people for specific jobs. And what are some of the needs to know today, whether you're working with a recruiter or if you're looking for a job, because it's a very digital world, and many of the jobs are posted now on job boards. You look at social media like LinkedIn.
Yep.
You might follow a recruiter on Twitter. And then I actually talked to job seekers and people who found jobs, and what were some of the strategies that they use to be able to find jobs today versus in the past.
Tracy Whalen with us today here on the program. Break that topic a little bit more down for us.
I will. So let's just talk about the job seekers
and
finders. What we found is in the past, the way that you found a job is you would blanket many job openings with a vanilla type of resume. And it really was maybe appropriate in a classical world because maybe a high school degree or a liberal arts degree was enough for most of the jobs. But today, companies are looking for very specialized requirements, and so you have to start to customize your resume to be relevant to the job opening. At the same time, if you look at the job openings and where they are, you have to learn how to go to job boards. How do you look at a job? How do you know if you're qualified for a job? And then really customize your cover letter and your resume to make sure that you're the right candidate and can attract someone because there's so many other people applying for the same job.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to know that networking is still the way that our job finders actually found jobs. But in a digital world, networking can be face-to-face. It can be using LinkedIn. It can be joining professional associations. It can be reaching out to past managers and colleagues to be able to help you find that perfect job.
Tracy Whalen with us today here on the program, Coast to Coast and Border to Border. The great doctor is a prominent thought leader on the impact of technology on careers, work, and society. And you can get more information at TracyWiling.com. That's TracyWiling.com. Tell us a little bit more about the job situation, how it works in with your latest book.
Well, I think it's important that people realize that the world is becoming much more technical. So by 2020, about 70% of the jobs will have a technology component to it. So that means the job that you have today may evolve. So I think it's important if you're working in an industry that you look to see how is technology changing it. What are the skills that you need? And I'll just give you some examples. You might remember going into a bank and you worked with a bank teller. But today, the bank teller really has been replaced somewhat by an ATM machine. So you don't really necessarily have to go into the bank anymore. You can go to an ATM machine or you can go online and do a lot of banking transactions. So as a bank teller, you need to look at that and say, okay, how is my job changing as more technology might be really replacing pieces of my job? Another example would be like the airline ticket agent. You remember waiting on those long lines to get a ticket or change a ticket. Well, now you can actually go to a kiosk in an airport, or you could go online. A lot of people like to go to Southwest and get their ticket in advance the night before because it gives them better seating and they can pick their seat for some airlines. Or they might get a priority A category for someone like a Southwest. So if you are in the airline industry and maybe you're a ticket agent, you have to look at your job and say, okay, how do I improve the skills that I have because pieces of my job have been replaced by technology? And I'll give you a third story, manufacturing. Many people may have heard about the increase of robotics in manufacturing or 3D printing, right, where you can actually print prototype parts now out of plastic and metal instead of actually building them. So as one robotic manager told me today that he started in manufacturing, working on the line, and he saw all of a sudden he was surrounded by robots, and he realized that pretty soon the robots might be replacing him. So he increased his skill set and positioned himself as a robot manager. And now that's what he does today. He actually manages crews of robots and works with companies to make sure that they are all synchronized and working properly. So I think it's important that people realize that these changes are occurring. Jobs may be shifting, but new opportunities happen at the same time.
It is a great guest with us today here on the line. Dr. Tracy joins us. Tell us a little bit more about why people should go pick up the book and how it corresponds with our topic today.
Absolutely. So Employed for Life, what I cover is all of the changes so people understand the shifts that are happening around them. But I also provide them with frameworks. So if you're going to plan your career today, you probably should start to look at your life as living to 100. And I know that's really hard for people to imagine. So I built in a framework, and there are charts in there that people can use to say, okay, if I'm in my 20s or 30s right now, where do I want to be at 100 or 90 or 80? And what are the things that I need to think about in terms of education, health, skill development, social, that will help me get to the stepping stones that I need to take so that I can live and enjoy my life? So maybe I do want to retire at 70. Well, how will that happen? What kind of financial planning do I need to do? What kind of job, skill training do I need to do to make sure that I get there? So I think that's an important part of the book that helps people say, okay, I can start to put a structure together about my life.
It's Tracy Willing with us today here on the broadcast. She is joining us live. She is a prominent thought leader on the impact of technology on society and work. Now, with your latest book, why did you decide to write this book?
I decided to write it, James, because there's so many people today who are either in a job and unhappy with it. In fact, there's a very large percentage of people who are not happy about where they work, but they're afraid to move. And as jobs opening happen, they want to know how to move. And number two is a lot of people who are still unemployed, and it does vary by city and state, but people want to have those quick facts of, gee, how do I get back on track to get a job? And I'll tell you what, I'll give you some advice, because I thought the job finders, the people who found jobs, gave some very concrete advice for people who are looking for a job. They said, number one, look for a job in the same or similar industry that you were in before or now. So, for example, if you were in the retail industry or banking industry, stick to applying for jobs in those industries, because the brutal reality is that companies hire people for what they do, and they do well. They're looking for that experience. They're not looking for what you hope to do. You might rather be in the airline industry, but if you're a retail sales, stick to that. Number two is look for a job in the same or similar functional area. And so what that means is if you are in sales, look for a sales job. If you are in marketing, look for a marketing job. If you want to make a job change, wait until you get the job and then start to explore movement within the firm. Number three is if you're not working, stay active, because when you interview with a potential employer, they really don't want to dwell on the fact that you don't have a job. What they want to hear about is, what did you do with your time when you weren't working? Did you freelance? Did you consult? Did you develop new skills, maybe some technology skills? Did you volunteer and use your skills in some capacity? So I think that's really important for people. And then number four, which is the big one, as I mentioned before, is how important networking is. Because let's face it, 75% or more of the jobs today are still found through networking. And it's really simple. Employers go to their employees and ask them, do you have a referral for me? Do you know someone? I trust you. Can you help me find someone to fill my job openings? And so networking is pretty critical. And usually the network is not the first person that you know in the friends or family. It's usually the second, third, or fourth circle of friends who help you actually put you in contact with a job.
We've got a great guest with us today. Dr. Tracy, how do we find you online before we let you go today?
My website is TracyWiling.com, which is TracyWilen.com. My Twitter is @Tracy Whalen. My Facebook is Dr. Tracy Whalen. And I, of course, am on LinkedIn as Tracy Whalen.
Well, Doctor, I appreciate it. Thanks for being with us, and we'll talk soon. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, bye.